Maybe I can just resize the window. All right, that's better. Okay. All right. Well, actually, now I need to share the screen, so I can just resize it for you. Share screen. Here it is. All right. All right. Cool. And we're off. Yeah. It's nice to meet y'all. All right. Oh yeah, and feel free to record it. Also, I believe there's a recording that'll be that. Do I need to press record, or will it just automatically show a recording? Okay, awesome. Yeah. So in which case, yeah, you guys can rewatch this later. So no need to stress out too much. And obviously, I'm available. You can tweet me at any time if you have any specific questions. Okay. So I've made over 100 games, which is one of the reasons why I have some qualifications to be giving this. I want you to know where my information is coming from, so that y'all feel like you can trust it to the amount you're willing to. So first, many people here likely have a awesome Q&A tab. Should I? All right. So I'll do Q&A stuff at the end. I know I said at the beginning, so that's on me, but just because we're in stuff now. Okay. Hey there. So thank you y'all for showing up. So I've created over 100 games. You can see them here. Yeah, it was my childhood. Some of you may have seen the Roblox story and about me, which was a surreal experience, but one of the best ones of my life. It's not every day you get to see so many people just really get to know you, but then also relate and empathize and just be like, oh, that's just like me. That's that. And yeah, there's a reason I didn't actually edit the documentary. I'm not always the best at communicating the more emotional side of things, which is why I study game design, because then I can bring it down to a math model and all that stuff. So let's continue. Okay. And so I also was an intern for in the summer of 2017, 2019. The first one I had a Nerf gun, then I got upgraded to a flamethrower, and the second one. So I mean, yeah, I can only wonder what the next internship will be like. Let's see, yeah, and also to people who are considering applying, definitely apply. I learned so much from these internships, and I will be talking a little bit more about what I learned later on. But just know that this kind of stuff was very helpful. Just being able to be around so many talented people. It's like the dev forum that just it's like every great aspect of the dev forum just amplified. And I like, okay, people feel like I'm like complaining when I say this, but when I was there in 2019, I was at the Roblox HQ literally every day. There was not a single day which I did not step foot in the office to work. And that's not because they told me to. In fact, they told me not to. They said, please go home. Enjoy life. But no, it was just it was such an amazing experience. I wish it to everyone who has that option. And also, I am one of the few people who decided that of all the college degrees to get, which could get a job, he decided to get a degree which would not likely get him a job. Yeah, no, but it gave me a lot of knowledge. I was a game design major for 2 years. Before that, I was computer graphics major at Purdue, and briefly a UX design major, which I was not great at. And then I had the internship, and I thought, wow, I want to learn. There's so much more to learn about game design, and I need to actually go to a new college to learn it. And so I got to be under some brilliant people there who taught me so much. My average 3.8 GPA is, just to clarify, that is from the games classes I took. My GPA average was not 3.8 across all classes, because some of them were boring and they weren't related to games, and I don't know why they made me take them, but 3.8 average GPA. But I graduated. So I did not graduate with a game design degree because, well, we'll get to that. But the gist is it was a 3-year program, and the third year was mostly just making a game, in my opinion. And well, I've already made a few games. So why spend another year's worth of college money when I could just start making games? And so I've made them. And Okay. And then books. This is something y'all can probably do. It's definitely, there's still obviously a little bit of a curve because books cost money most of the time. But if you go to a library, I've seen half of these on the shelves, especially the behavioral economics stuff. The Dan Ariely, if I had to recommend a single book on this screen, it would be the one which I've sized 4 times as big as the other ones. And that is Predictably Irrational by Dan Ariely. We'll be talking a lot about the kind of stuff that, okay, yeah. In my experience, wider industry books are more helpful just because the kind of things that go into making a Roblox game, you can typically find from a wider industry game or even just wider field. Like a lot of these are like, I think only row 2 here deals at all with with actual game industry. And then row 1, there are 3 books on game design stuff, but it's not, you'll notice most of these are just like general psychology and behavior and all of that fun stuff. Yeah, and so I recommend Dan Ariely's Predictably Irrational because that is what was recommended to me back in 2017 by Sorkis. Sorkis basically helped Superhero Life 2 not be a complete flop because he play tested it and showed me a lot of ways the onboarding process needed help. And if I hadn't fixed it, I don't think it would be as successful as it is today. And so I definitely recommend Predictably Irrational. And if you enjoy my presentation today at any level, Predictably Irrational is very helpful. And it's just an intro into the field of behavioral economics that's really fun to read. And to those more focused on monetization, they talk a lot about how our brains deal with money and all that stuff. And just read all of his books. Okay. And so what have I learned? Okay, yeah, there'll be a few slides like these. Yeah, this is my legacy. Okay, so in order to understand fun, you need to understand player motivation. In order to understand player motivation, you need to understand players. And in order to understand players, you need to understand people. And in order to understand people, you need to understand their limitations. And that is... and that's going to be our process. That's going to be a general structure. We're going to start at the bottom and just understanding the limitations. And then we're going to build up from there all the way until we understand fun. And that's the goal. Now, let's understand our limitations and why it is so hard to comprehend this photo. Now, we can wonder a bit why someone would put ducks in a mug. And there's a good deal of confusion there. But what I'm really talking about is the image itself, is the information stored in it. Like you see a cup, you see ducks, you see it appears to be in the Roblox HQ, you see someone working in the background, you see quite a few things. And that is how we've categorized it, how we see it. Now, let me actually show you what the image is. Because, as you may have guessed, this isn't actually a real thing in front of you. This is a photo of a real thing. And that photo has been digitized, which is important because with these kind of, computers, you need to break stuff down to its pure information. And so let's view this photo through the lens of what a human could possibly remember. And that is long-term memory. So the world record for remembering pi is around 100,000 digits in. And that is a lot of information. It's not even necessarily the human extent of our memory. From what we can tell, the amount of information you could store is much larger than that. But this is, as far as I can tell, the largest memorization of a single topic. So if you studied this photo for the rest of your life, then, and by the way, I'm right here, I'm having it as, I'm using the RGB standard. So each pixel is about 3 numbers. And if you stared at this for the rest of your life, or probably not the rest of your life, but just a few years and memorized every bit of information and then recited it for 16 hours, this is the level of detail you could get, which is much different than this. But like, that is nothing because this is still very good compared to what our working memory is. Our working memory That's stuff you can remember at a single time. It's when people tell you to remember these numbers, it's what you can keep in your head at one moment. This is what the image looks like with working memory. I couldn't even use the RGB standard anymore. I had to go back to 8-bit colors because you need 2 people to remember this many pixels in RGB standard. Actually, maybe even 3. Let's see. So it's 6 times 3, so that's 18. So about like 2.5, because you can only remember about 7 to 8 numbers, and if you're lucky, 9. And you may think, well, wait, I can remember my phone number. That's long-term memory. I'm telling you, if I just say that, some random numbers off the top of my head, like 74092514, you can hold maybe that many numbers, but beyond that, you start dropping them. And here's something you may have noticed. That image does not look like this. If we were just interpreting the information on the screen and then seeing it as it is, hypothetically, this should be what we're seeing, right? Like it's the amount of information we can comprehend. Why does it feel so different than this? Because we aren't actually understanding the information. We are using something called a cognitive bias. Now, you've probably only heard of cognitive biases in the negative sense. But what we're going to be talking about tonight is how they're actually necessary for our comprehension of reality. So this image in front of you, this is an image of a neural network. You may have heard of them in computer science type stuff. Neural networks are fascinating. They're the coolest bit of computer science right now. Basically, how they work is you have a bunch of raw information, hypothetically infinite amount. Like we're talking every pixel of an image broken down to into individual numbers. And then you have those numbers correlate randomly with a middle layer. And then that middle layer just repeats the process, correlating randomly with another layer. And then it all correlates to a final output layer. And what you do is that you set the output layer. And just in case anyone's not aware, not too familiar with it, a correlation is just a number between -1 and 1, which tells how similar something is. And a 1 to 1 would be completely similar. A -1 would be the complete opposite. And a 0 would be no recognizable relationship. And so by randomly setting these, we've basically created a behavior pattern. And so you run input through it, and then you get the output. And if you know what the proper output is, you can keep on training it by randomly tweaking the numbers until you have, and then selecting the ones which are the best versions, and then continuing to train them some more. And you keep repeating the process, taking the best version and training it until you have a set of correlations between the layers, which lead to the determined outcome. And so what I'm saying is that that's how our brains work, because it is. We have all of this sensory information, all those colors, all these cones in our eyes which receive information, all the nerve cells that go through our body that receive physical information, taste, smell, even stuff. We detect gravity. We can detect so many different things. I don't remember the entire list. I don't think there is an entire list. It gets kind of blurry. But point is, we have so much information. We can see this image, and through basically neural network behavior in our brains, we filter it and reduce it to these interior middle zones, and then it comes out with a single result. We look at this and see duck. That is duck. And that is cup. And that is duck in a cup. And that is an odd thing for a person to do. And actually that brings up an interesting point. This photo still requires more information than is shown right here. Like, you need to understand what ducks are. You need to understand what a cup is. You need to be able to read English. You need to be able to understand how gravity works, how fluid works. Like, you need to understand how light refraction from the surface of the stuff in the mug makes it seem like liquid. Like, there's so much information that is not here, which you need to understand it. So that's just a whole other thing. And point is, cognitive biases are these middle layers. They're very unclear. They aren't really directly shown to us, but through measuring our behaviors, we can hypothesize their existence. We can determine, oh wait, so when people are given these exact information bits, it continues to change this behavior at the end in this way. And we can figure out how they all interact with each other And that is the basic idea behind behavioral economics, how our brains take the complicated world around it and simplify it. And that simplification is very necessary. So I'm honored to show y'all the Cognitive Bias Codex, which is the most helpful tool in my experience for understanding this. It takes every known correlation we have between behavior and input and maps it out. It shows how we handle too much information. So when I'm talking about like the biases that we have are trained for a certain level of information, and when we overwhelm even that, this is how it behaves. When we have not enough meaning, when the biases, the cognitive patterns we have don't give us the right thing to do, these are our plan Bs right here. Need to act fast. When we don't have enough time to process stuff, to get more information, this is how we behave. What should we remember? With all this information, what do we store for later? And you can see each one of these is broken down into their own smaller categories and these very interesting patterns that we can see across different biases. We notice things already primed in memory or repeated often. So if you say the number 3 80 times in a row and then write down a random number, there's an increased chance you'll write down a 3. And that goes with anything. That goes with habits. That goes into so many different behaviors. And bizarre, funny, visually striking, or anthropomorphic things stick out more than non-bizarre, unfunny things. This is the result of stuff to help us get the most important information first, and typically it's people, because obviously humans are very social. So being able to recognize people instantly is very helpful. And obviously people who recognize people much sooner over time were more likely to succeed in continuing their line. And we'll get to that stuff later. I was getting ahead of myself, I'm sorry. We notice when something has changed, pretty basic, pretty important. We are drawn to details that confirm our existing beliefs. I think that's one which it gets a lot of media coverage, because typically when you hear about cognitive biases, you hear about these ones. You hear about the ones that make people say things you disagree with. And this is typically associated with them. And in all honesty, typically right and wrong, you'll find people who are right who just happen to be right because of these biases. Like there's no like super rational person out there. If you happen to be right on something, you just happen to have these biases in the right direction. You're not necessarily like the superior individual. Everyone's mind can be accidentally swayed in different direction, which is why it's very important what input people receive. It's why parenting is so important. It's why schools are important, because what you are shown influences how you think indefinitely. And also we notice flaws in others more easily than we notice flaws in ourselves. Yeah, I'd say that's pretty true. I think there are a few. I think it's also worth mentioning that the flaws you notice in others are also different than the ones you notice in yourself. Like, I'm not saying nobody here notices flaws in themselves, but but there's a different level. There are different flaws. They're they're different types. Like there's a whole bunch of things. Read the books on it. I can't give you a 20-hour talk on just this page. Not enough meaning. I tend to find patterns in sparse stories. So this is very interesting, because basically, if you have a button which randomly turns on a light, or just a light which randomly turns on, don't even need a button. People put in a room will develop a theory for how to turn that button on. Some may think it's tapping their foot will sometimes get it turned on. Some people think it might be leaning forward. But like, if it randomly happens, it's been shown through multiple scientific experiments that people start associating that button's turning on with completely unrelated behavior. And this kind of stuff happens more often than you think. Like a very funny first world version is crossing the street with traffic lights, like the walk signs. They're the buttons you press to cross the street with, and sometimes they'll just turn them off. And so you'll press it, and it was always going to turn on the walk sign for you, and then sometimes it won't. And so you'll get these situations where even when a person knows that, you'll get situations where people will behave certain ways even when it's not reflected in knowledge they know. They know this light doesn't work. But they'll attribute that same behavior onto various things that could be completely unrelated. And we feel characteristics of stereotypes, generalities, prior histories. This one also gets a lot of media coverage, and it's definitely one which has caused problems in the world, but also it's literally how our brain works, attributing stuff to things. Like fire, for instance. Touching fire has a stereotype of burning you. I think that's an accurate stereotype most of the time, but I'm sure you'll find every once in a while there'll be a situation where like holographic flames or something won't burn you. But the reason our brains work this way is because it's this entire stereotyping and generalities and prior histories. I mean, that's literally just learning from history. Not everything will always be an exact duplicate, but obviously in our modern world, we've recognized it's negatively affecting things. And so this is not necessarily an excuse saying we can't fix anything. We can certainly improve stuff. It's just the bias itself is not evil. It's neutral. And anyway, I can't just run through these for the entire hour. Nobody will be around. Need to act fast. Stay focused. We favor immediate relatable things. We like preserving autonomy. We like doing all these different things. And we reduce key lists into their key events. We discard specifics to form generalities. And also a very important one, we edit and reinforce some memories after the fact. And that is cognitive bias. And it is not random. Let's talk about the training which led to our current bias, because what I've just shown you is mostly about how we think, like processing information to understand it, which is useful. It's very important, but it's not what makes a player play your game. What we're about to talk about is emotion. It's the feelings. It's the sensation, the motivation for why someone joins your game and why they stick around. Because, let me water. Oh, it's a RDC cup. All right. Let's see. That wasn't planned, but I mean, I have so many RDC cups at this point. It's very possible that it can just show up. Okay. But emotion, it is what drives us. It's what we associate with giving meaning to life. And that's true, but not in the philosophical way necessarily. It's true scientifically, and we can show it. Let's first dispel of a certain misunderstanding that is pushed. It's the idea that your emotions are hormones, that oxytocin makes you feel more love, that all these different, like cortisol makes you feel stressed out, dopamine makes you happy, serotonin it makes things less painful. All these different hormones have been associated with certain emotions when they're not. Let me explain. So what this is just a case of correlation. Yeah, I think you can rejoin. I believe it's just all people can even join late if they need to. Okay, so I'm sorry. So in terms of how our brains actually function, it's very much like someone associating Black Friday. We just had Black Friday a few days ago. Would anyone here describe Black Friday as the time when there are more post office workers delivering packages? No. It's because these chemicals, these hormones, are just the delivery system. They're just what connects different parts of the brain. And they are released in larger amounts for certain emotions. But that's a correlation. That's part of the mechanism. That's not actually the mechanism itself. It's very much it'd be like describing a video game as a bunch of ones and zeros, and certain video games as having more zeros in them. Like it's not meaningless because it's a great way for us to track certain patterns, but it is not emotion itself. What emotion itself is survival instincts, essentially. And I think I choose that word because that's how they started. And so we have some survivalists here to help us through. And it's all about because how you feel keeps you alive. And even at the very basic earliest stages, we're talking about unicellular beings. like the E. coli bacteria, makes you sick sometimes. It will mutate more rapidly when under stress, when under and in more dangerous scenarios. This is a very basic survival instinct, and arguably, it will eventually, upon a few million years of evolution, will become a something we would describe as an emotion. It is a motivation to our behavior, which helps us out, because that is what emotions are. They help us out. They exist because they help us out. It eventually, through with multicellular beings, became what we know as fear. A very the stuff like fight and flight, that kind of started showing up. Communicating there, that you're in a certain way. That's more social. We'll get to that, but stuff like a rattlesnake. For one, it knows that if something comes close to it that threatens it, it can attack and try to hurt it, or it can try to escape. That is a behavior pattern which exists in the same way that fear does. Because you can feel it inside of you, obviously, but more importantly, it'll sway how you act. A person who's feeling afraid will behave differently at some level, whether it be increased heart rate or whether it be like running out of the room. Fear changes us physically, and our brains are physically part of us. And so with fear in evolved species, we have these kind of more, we've gone from the unicellular, just start mutating more to try to escape stuff, basically almost fully flight. But I guess you could say fight because they are parasitic in nature. But anyway, different thing. Fear. It was arguably one of our first emotions. It kept us alive. And because it kept certain people alive, because it evolved with some people just randomly being a little bit more fight or flighty, was more likely to go into that under certain circumstances, more likely to either fight back or to run away. Certain species really dedicate themselves to one or the other. Humans kind of got both, but that's not necessary. I think most species can do flight, except for maybe like a mollusk or something. Obviously this exists in plants as well. Like it's life. And so fight or flight, that exists across most species in different amounts. And eventually we get another big emotion, which is long-term goals. This is stuff you usually hear associated with dopamine. It's the behavioral patterns that allow us to do things which are not immediately gratifying. This was another example of certain certain organisms at some point were just a little bit more, their behavior just helped them out a little bit more in the long term. And because of that, they were more likely to survive and more likely to reproduce. And thus, those kind of behaviors became more and more ingrained in certain species. And then eventually, social motivations, where the realizing that living in groups can be a situation which helps people out. And so there's very much a pro-social benefit to being around people of your same species, such as obviously protection and also reproducing. That's much more helpful when other people in your species are nearby. But also it gave rise to the negative emotions, because most people who've taken a biology class will remember ecosystems die due to overpopulation. If too many organisms group in the same area, if too many people stick together, you end up getting a situation where there might be too many of them in the same place, and that can backfire. And so, in a sense, it appears over time, negative antisocial motivations have also been rewarded through natural selection. And because of that, we have stuff like anger. We have things that work against other people of our own species, and also contrary behaviors which work towards the benefit of a species. And so it's all of these different motivations, all these different behavior patterns, which drive what we call emotion, because they're not really these separate. There's not an emotion part of the brain. It's just the brain, and how it's evolved over time dictates these built-in behaviors, just like the cognitive biases. These are emotional biases. These are behavioral survival instincts that have evolved long past what we typically attribute to survival, because typically you can fairly easily understand how running away and fighting can help you survive. But in the long term, you'll need more survival instincts, which is why it's no surprise that you'll see certain animals like those shown here with longer lifespans than, say, an insect with a less developed longer term planning and I wouldn't say less developed social behavior, but it's different. We can agree it's different. And So that is the basic way our brains operate emotions. And so now we understand emotions, which means we understand motivation. How how can we bring that back to players? And so what I've decided to call the triumvirate model, it's taking this kind of stuff and combining it in a way which allows us to apply it in a certain manner. It's a lens. This is not what I'm showing you right now. Is there's not a success part of the brain necessarily. There's a social or survival part. There are correlations to areas like survival. That's typically amygdala. Social. That's more frontal lobe. Success. That's a smaller part of the amygdala, but it's definitely in there. So like there are areas of the brain which show that these things evolved over time. This all didn't happen at once, but there aren't specifically like success or social or survival organs in the brain, and like many lens actually, because this is one thing I recommend to people. It's an art of game design. You can either get the book format or the lens format. It's an amazing tool for game designers. It is just a bunch of different philosophies and ways to understand stuff. There are literally hundreds of cards in here. Like here's one, the lens of spectation. That's convenient. For thousands of years, man has loved to sit and watch others play games, but only if the games are worth watching. To make sure your game is spectator-worthy, ask yourself these questions. Is my game interesting to watch? Why or why not? How can I make it more interesting to watch? And it's just a bunch of these little ways you can think through your problem. It's super helpful for brainstorming, super helpful for getting other people's ideas into your thought process when you are limited to only a certain amount of people on your team. Water break. All right, and so this is a lens like that, something you can use to help simplify the hyper-complicated world and hopefully get some workable insights from it. I call it the triumvirate because it's a 3-person dictatorship like that back in ancient Rome. And with it, I like to think that these 3 major things dictate how a player will enjoy your game. Like it's just, these are the 3 big things. And you'll notice there's overlap, and we'll get to that. So one other cool thing about the triumvirate model is it can be applied on top of existing models. There are a lot of existing models for game motivation. One I particularly like is the quantic foundry model. The Bartle type, though, is very triumvirate. Yeah. Maybe I'm saying it wrong. I don't know. I'm just saying it with an accent. This is the way Hoosiers say it. For people in Indiana, we need to rebrand. Yeah, but the big personality traits, Bartle types, quantic foundry model, you can see these broken down to social, success, and survival. And they even combine. Oh, sorry. The title. Okay, yes. It's by Jesse Shell. It's also one of the first things that gets recommended on most like best game designer tools lists. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, but no, the big 5 personality traits. That's one you may see more in psychology senses. You can break that down. Bartle types. Once again. The quantic foundry model, I think, is really interesting because unlike the other ones, the quantic foundry model was built up out of it's emergent from a bunch of survey data, which survey data isn't perfect. There's a lot of ways you can skew it. In fact, I know the way they collected it has a lot of flaws, but it still does show trends. And apparently was not flawed enough to break up these kind of patterns. And so you'll see that things sort of cluster together in a social, survival, and success areas. Which I think is very interesting because that means that we have 2 different scientifically based areas reconverging, which gives more credibility to this idea that all of our motivation is based on these 3 areas. But this is not a game. You're looking at this and you're not going to think, wow, I could look at this for hours. This is so motivating. I can't wait to get home from school so I can look at the triumvirate model a little bit more. How do we turn this into a game? And I think it's easier to first understand how existing games fit in it. We have stuff like Minecraft, which, because it's a sandbox, can really fit across multiple categories. We have Stardew Valley, which is it's a very success-based game because you're completing tasks, and so that makes the task completion part of your brain happy. You have long-term goals, all the stuff that success likes. Social, on the other hand, So here's what I dislike about existing models. Too often they seem to limit social experiences to multiplayer. I don't think social is multiplayer because to me, social is just hijacking the part of your brain which was built up around social behavior. And that means the emotions that you gain from interacting with other people. Stuff like crying at a sad scene in a movie because you're invested in the character. That character isn't real, but it feels real. Yeah, who here has ever been emotionally moved by a game? It's the same thing. It's social. It's a social part of our brain. And it doesn't need to be multiplayer, but if you're not ready to do hours of writing and limit yourself a lot, because typically pre-written games are difficult to make replayable, then multiplayer is obviously a much easier way to make your game social. But it is not only multiplayer, and I think that's very important. It can very much be an immersion, a fantasy. Fantasies are often very social. They're a new world for you to live in, to interact with the people in, to be someone new. It's an identity thing, and identities are very social. And also, of course, we have survival. Now, obviously, Rocket League does not end with like the executions of anyone, and I guess, well, maybe figuratively. I'm very bad at Rocket League. And so we have competitive games. We have very much like going against another force. It can be a person, or it can be the game itself. It can be going against a storm. It can be going against, let's see, your own limited resources. Survival is very much it's very much a thing which can make a game compelling. And but it's not just like survival crafting games. It's often seen in like games like Call of Duty, let's see, and obviously Rocket League, and also a few Roblox games. Let's take this Roblox centric. You may see some of the games you've played up here. In fact, some of you may have even made or worked on them. That's what's so cool about this kind of community stuff. You could genuinely meet some of these people. And so we have stuff like Adopt Me and Royal High being much more social experiences. I wouldn't say it's too much of a competitive game, though I'm sure there are ways to compete. And I'm not sure it's too much of a success-based game, though I'm sure people feel a sense of success when they enjoy when they purchase something or when they get a new pet. There's definitely a task completion element. But by and large, I'd say the reason people play Adopt Me, they play it because they like getting to meet people and they like getting to live in this fantasy of having a nice house and all that stuff. I doubt many of them would say, "Oh, I love Adopt Me because of the competitive nature of it," or "Oh, I love Adopt Me because I don't know, I'm trying to think of like a long term. I love the long term strategy aspects." No. Adopt Me is social. Then you have some games like Welcome to Bloxburg, which are also very competitive, but it is more of a success-based thing. People like making these cool houses. They love sharing them. So Eco Scratcher says an interesting lack of primarily survival type games. And just a heads up, I think maybe I removed it, but for a while I had a slide about Booga Booga because that's a sandbox game, and sandbox games are really helpful. And like Minecraft, you could say is a survival game in survival mode. But survival games in general, it's the thing here is not so much that there aren't fast-paced games that really rely on survival mechanics on Roblox, but just Roblox is a hyper-social platform. How many games on the front page right now are single player? Like, can you think of a single one, honestly? I'm trying to think of a single player game that has an active user base. Horror games are fun, and I've seen some really well-made ones, but I have yet to see any of them succeed. At least financially. I'd say that a lot of them have succeeded artistically. But survival-wise, you really don't have these. You really don't have games that aren't super social. So yes, Bee Swarm Simulator is less social. But I'd say there's still a social element because it's at the end of the day, it's not a single-player game. There is an element of flexing. That's why I love using that word to describe social competition. It's like you get so many more bees, people look at you, and you're like, "Oh yeah, Mr. Cougar, I have all the bees." Very relatable. And just as a rule of thumb, to figure out if a game's social, just think how few people are needed to make it fun. And also, through adding other people, could it be made more fun? Like, I'd say a game that's very antisocial would be Cookie Clicker, because Cookie Clicker is a single player game. It's very deep in the success realm. There's not really much to show anyone because you'd be too embarrassed to admit you play Cookie Clicker. It's definitely, but I play it all the time. I love it. It's on my phone right now. And survival wise, like, you can have a player versus the world type thing, like horror games. I think horror games, someone mentioned those earlier, are typically they are single player, and typically they aren't that social. In fact, they teach you to fear people, which I guess is still a social behavior, but we don't got to get too deep into that. So my most successful game, my games have been played around 200 million times, and I had a whole bunch of slides back. Speaking of social flexing, and I mean, I'm a full-time game dev. I was able to end college a year early and just go make games full-time. This is my office. Yeah. And that was my battery pack. Flexing over, though. And back to the stuff you're interested in. Yeah, not that I'm not very interesting. The survival area is typically fairly antisocial. You don't typically have social games that exist beyond social, but I could think of a few. Like, you could say that the Joker movie was an antisocial social experience because it's about a person. It's like you're bonding with a person, but it's really just one character. It gets messy. Anyway, you can think of a dozen different ways to apply this to a game. And also, I think it's worth mentioning that not every player will enjoy a single game type for the same reason. Like, in my game, Superhero Life 2, it's been played over 100 million times at this point. There are very much two different types of players. There's a player who loves the role-playing immersion social stuff, and then there are players who are a little bit more fighting loving. They're a little bit more in the survival, fast-paced action, but also a little bit of the success of when you beat someone in battle. Like those are the kind of deviations on a player level that you could find doing. And I would not suggest trying to split your player base. It makes designing for them very difficult. Just make a new game if you want to target a new type of player. But just know that on an individual level, a person may enjoy your game for a reason other than that it was designed. Like, think of a bad movie, like like a B movie or something. People enjoy The Room not for the reasons Tommy Wiseau, I think that's how it's pronounced, not for the reasons he wanted it to be enjoyed. And in a sense, that's what happened to Superhero Life 2. I thought it'd be a lot more fight stuff. I never said the B movie was bad. It's art. It ascends movies. And so with my games, arguably, I had sort of a The Room type situation where the reasons Superhero Life 2 succeeded were not necessarily the reasons I intended. I thought it'd be a lot more combat based. I thought it would be a lot more people fighting. I didn't realize how important the roleplay stuff was until honestly after my third game. Now, Superhero Life 4 will be very roleplay heavy because I realized that's actually where the core player lands. So you can learn from games that already exist, but if you enjoy something differently than others, try to recognize that so that you don't think the reason people play ragdoll engines is because they have a deep fascination with stairs. Like, a stair simulator will not necessarily do as well. All right, yeah. For sure. Yeah, Tyridge brings up a good point. If you're designing a multiplayer social game, or even just a social game returning to NPCs, one issue is getting everyone in the same spot. And we'll be talking a little bit more about onboarding and tracking core loops and motivations later. But just know, if you don't make it to the end, that you need to have people to talk to. You can't like, imagine you're playing a chess game with someone, but like the chess board, like there's like is on the other side of the room. Like, so you each have to walk there and back every time you make a move. Like, you need to keep people close. And so definitely think a lot about map design when it comes to social behavior. And honestly, any of these. Map design and making sure all players are within the right range of each other is important for all these. Survival, like a first-person shooter game, would not be fun if it was all taking place in a room this size. It'd be chaotic, and there might be some joy in that, but it would certainly not be strategic. You'd get almost like a fully survival-focused chaos game. That's different from natural disaster survival, honestly, or Shark Bite. Shark Bite, you're literally in a small boat, but it's a big map. Anyway, success stuff as well. With like the Bee Swarm Simulator, you need to be able to find areas in the map, and you need to be able to see other people doing stuff so that you can both learn from them and also aspire to be them. Be them. Okay, and yeah, that's different talk. Honestly, in any further detail, it's a very important thing to learn, but it is not the focus today. But yeah, so here I am on this. You'll notice a similarity. We both have a rocket jetpack with miniguns, and this is the type of game I usually enjoy. And we're going to be designing for my preferences, not necessarily because they're the most popular. I'd say the typical player probably is a little bit more social than I am. But all that stuff is only so... But I don't know that person. I'm not talking to them right now. Let's design for what I know because, well, I know it, and I've been able to think a lot about it. And I think that it's a good litmus test. And also, there's no better way, in my opinion, to make a game. It's definitely sort of a shortcut. And it might not be sustainable long term if you want to get into a full industry job. But in just in designing games that you enjoy playing, you will always know if your game is fun. And that'll help you a lot. But it can blind you. Sometimes you'll play your game and then you'll think it's amazing, and then other people won't. That's a huge problem. It's one I've experienced so many times. But it's a solvable one, and arguably it's easier to solve than if you don't even know why your game's fun. If you know why your game is fun, you can work to emphasize that, to get more players into that zone. So make games that you like. You have that option right now. You might not if you go into a AAA game job, but right now you're an indie dev. You can make what you like. So do it. Don't waste the opportunity. Get good making stuff that you like. That's how I did it. Those 100 games back there, I'm not sure if you noticed, but there was a lot of Star Wars, a lot of Star Trek, a lot of Marvel, a lot of my interests, because that was what helped me keep going. That's what motivated me to keep making stuff. And yeah, so, but let's assume for a moment that we don't necessarily know why we enjoy certain areas, and break it down to mechanics and trends in mechanics that could help. Sorry about that. All right, that could help us recognize them in other games. So survival mechanics, jump scares are helpful for stuff like horror games, especially. But it's fast paced. Horror games, now just to clarify, they're kind of weird in the sense that they aren't necessarily always fast paced. Like there will be quiet moments where you're just walking around waiting for a monster to jump out, but those work because you're still on the edge of your seat. You're still you'll still be very afraid. Like I watched the first Conjuring movie a few nights ago, and I was annoying the heck out of my girlfriend because every time something scary is about to happen, I'd say like, "Oh, it's a fake out," because they would have the music play up right before it, and every time the music plays up, they fake out. And then in the quietness after the fake out, they scare you. And so then once it's quiet afterwards, I'm like, oh, here's the real scare. And she almost kicked me out. I do not recommend watching a movie with me. But, oh yeah, you live near the Conjuring house. I think it was pretty creepy. I heard there was some, no, not off topic. Look it up though. Interesting stuff about that house. All right, and like a whole bunch of legal stuff. Is it obvious that I'm ADD? Yeah. I got all the A mental illnesses. So, woo. Let's see. Okay. Yeah. So, quick avatar movement is also helpful. And we have, and that's especially for like first-person shooters, because if you have a slower gameplay that's competitive, typically it'll go more into the success strategy area, because it's not most of the gameplay is not defined by fight or flight. And that's the really big picture. When I say that these are the core motivations for these games, I mean for the actual core of the game, for what you're doing most of the time. Not that I'm not saying there will never be a success moment in an Adopt Me game or a survival or like a competitive moment. I'm saying 95% of the play experience is not that. 95% of the play experience is motivated by social behavior. And so sensory overload, loud noises, sudden bright lights, all that stuff, especially apparent to me. It's just that's why I don't play horror games too much. I don't like the loud noises. And let's see. Did you know the reason I don't have a 4.0 in that one GPA stuff I showed earlier is because I'm bad at sound design? It was one class, just tanked everything. Okay, all right. Yeah, so I'm not great with video game sound. So someone please make a video game sound talk so I can redeem myself. Destruction, that's also very much a survival thing. It really gets you into a survival mode. I think that's fairly built in. You could argue it's emergent from the loud noises and sensory overload and chaotic stuff, but I think to an extent there's also just a natural selection where people who run away from explosions are more likely to survive to tell the tale. I think that could very well be a thing, like run away from destruction. And chaotic, of course, which, as I said, could be related to destruction. So those are survival mechanics. Those are the things. If you want your game to be deeply survival based, this is where you keep it. This is the attributes that are associated with it. And with success mechanics, the intent here is to provide players with a sense of pride and accomplishments. Anyway, so success mechanics, they often have a clear win state. You won't have an ambiguous ending like, say, Minecraft. Obviously, Minecraft did add the end, but I'd say most playstyles are not necessarily to get to the end. And those who are, well, that's achievement-based, and that's success. Minecraft's a bad example. I'm sorry. It's a sandbox. It has every motivation in there. But let's see. Adopt Me. You can't win Adopt Me. Anyone who says they're winning Adopt Me has a very interesting take on things. They should probably give their own talk, because I don't think you can win Adopt Me. And same with Natural Disaster Survival. You can. Fall Guys is definitely, because there's a clear winner, that would definitely be partially in the success area. In fact, did I put it on the initial games listing? I don't think I meant to. No, I didn't. But yeah, no, platformers especially, those are very success-oriented. In fact, that's oftentimes, they're more of a survival success, because there's like the fast-paced aspects of a platform that get your heart racing. But at the end of the day, you do it because you want to complete the course. You don't do it just for the joy of having your heart race a little bit more. Yeah, so clear win state. And then sort of related, but also different, clear threats to delay, destroy the win state. Now you don't necessarily have to have a lose state. Like Cookie Clicker is a great instance of a purely success game, in my opinion. It's not really any fast-paced gameplay. Your heart never really races, because you never actually lose progress. You'll get like these little cookie-eating mite things, and you'll slow down your cookie production rate, but you're always getting closer to that win state of having unlocked everything. Though I think that one might actually go on infinitely. But you basically, the win state in that one can be intrinsic. All these mechanics can be intrinsic versus extrinsic, which means directly stated by the game, as well as versus what the player just wants to do. Like an intrinsic goal in Minecraft would be to make a house that looks like my house or something. And you can design for intrinsic mechanics. I think that's something which some of the best games do. You don't necessarily have to make every single goal in your game just hard-coded into the design. Allow your players some freedom. If you remove freedom from a game, you just made a movie. You made a movie in the most expensive way possible. No. You're making a game. Give player freedom. Let them choose stuff. And anyway, so clear threats, that's also important for a success thing. Because if you remove threats, if you remove the option for a less than optimal playthrough, then, well, what do you? You can't make any decisions. Literally, nothing you do matters. That's why I don't like Uno that much. It's because there's not. I feel like some games need more mechanics, not less. And compare game performances and have. So that means stuff like leaderboards is a good example, but even just recording your own high score. Like leaderboard doesn't need to be super. Leaderboards are inherently more social usually, but they don't necessarily need to be. They don't necessarily need to be social to get the success type stuff. And the completed over multiple sessions. This is more of a trend than a necessity, just because you'll get stuff like 4X games are a great example. They're hours long. Chess is typically a longer game. Just with highly strategy driven games, typically you see it lasting longer. I think the shortest strategy driven game I could think of would be like tic-tac-toe. But honestly, when you get to that small of a game, it almost starts triggering like fight and flight, like aggression, survival instincts. So I wouldn't even say it's either a very bad success game or an okay survival game. And so that leads us to the final one, social mechanics, which is very important. Highly advise you listen to this, because Roblox is possibly the most social place on the internet. Like it needs other people to be fun. Like arguably, the existence of Reddit shows you that social media does not necessarily need to involve other people. Roblox needs other people, and so most social area on the internet. And so with that, you have typically fantasy and immersion intensive. Now, this one is not necessary, but it's helpful, because if you allow the person to be someone else, they can get a superior experience than to what they're currently getting in real life. Like, for instance, let's say you have an insecurity with the way you look or the way you talk or anything. In a video game, you don't have to deal with that. You can just be what your ideal version of yourself is. And as to whether or not that's healthy to promote, that's a different talk. But the point is, by giving the players the option, it allows some escape for people who much need it. I know in superhero life, I've had multiple people tell me how they're physically disabled in one way or another in real life, and to be able to just run around with super speed when in real life they're in a wheelchair really made a difference to them. And so it's definitely, fantasy can be something that's very helpful, that helps people at the end of the day very much keep on going. And so in that sense, definitely consider fantasy. It can be really helpful. And in my opinion, there aren't too many downsides, short of violating a, I guess, artistic aesthetic. Like some people really like realistic games. And in terms of multiplayer, but also NPC based, I think I talked about that earlier. Requiring cooperation is super helpful especially for multiplayer games. Cooperating with NPCs can backfire unless the NPC is coded very well. But cooperation can get people talking, can get people interacting, and in social games, interaction is key to the fun. So cooperation mechanics help a ton. And also, one thing I've noticed that's really helpful with this builds on the identity stuff I mentioned earlier. If you give someone a unique task or identity, they will absorb it into their own identity, and they will be prouder, and they will feel more motivated and more connected than they would otherwise. Like you see this in like World of Warcraft a ton, where they'll have a little group. What do they call this? It's not a clan. Clans are bigger. It's I don't know. Is it obvious? I don't play that game too much. You have a group of people, and they'll have specialized roles. Guilds. No, that's still bigger. What's the small one? It's a group of people like going into raiding parties. Thank you. Okay, yeah, raiding parties, and you'll have specialized. Like you'll have healers, you'll have people attacking, you have more melee, more ranged, all that stuff. And in giving people that unique task or identity, they feel like they belong more. They feel more integral. It's much more successful than, say, a situation where everyone has the exact same impact on the world. By giving someone a sense of uniqueness, it builds back on one of those cognitive biases way in the back saying that we need to feel like we can change something. And when you have a unique role, you feel all the more important for it. And that can provoke some very compelling motivations that are very helpful from a social standpoint. Because when it feels like not only that your thing is that you're the only one who can do this task, but that other people are relying on you to do this task, that is very helpful. So I definitely would suggest thinking of ways to do that. Like Overwatch is another great example. And then, of course, Team Fortress 2, which pioneered a bunch of the stuff Overwatch does. And yeah, you could find a long list of ways for this to be realistic. Dungeons and Dragons is another great example. Anyway, but let's put all this together. Towers brings up a good point, saying that more roles makes your game more accessible. It makes it so that you're not so much pinning it on a single view or fit, because having different roles does not necessarily mean like if we go back to the this stuff, being on one area, like it's always going to be a little bit random. You can't ever get like pinpoint accuracy in reality. You can design for pinpoint accuracy, but to an extent, you also don't want to make it so exclusive that only one person can enjoy the game. You want to make it so that people in this general area can, because odds are the mechanics you're designing will allow some variance and preference. Like think of, let's see, a survival crafting game. Like 7 Days to Die is a great one that I've enjoyed a lot. Or I guess more played Ark Survival Evolved. Some people may really enjoy the more social training dinosaur stuff. And some people really may enjoy just the fighting, survival stuff, or the crafting success stuff. That's a sandbox game. As I said, those are typically very broad, but in my experience, they are very compelling because of that. Because there's enough room for players to enjoy certain things, but it's also not so. But it also doesn't force them into any one play style. Yet they all mesh together so well. I do love sandbox games. I wish there were more of them on Roblox. Best one I can find at the moment is Booga Booga, and probably like Jailbreak and Mad City are probably in second place for sandbox type gameplay. Anyway, so let's take the little, I guess this little recipe. To me, you should. It's helpful to think of this stuff as like it's two parts success, one part survival, and a dash of fantasy. Dash of social. I think I said that right. Anyway, when you break that into actual mechanic traits, we can start assembling an idea of what the game kind of feels like. It's going to be strategic. There's a clear goal. It's a longer game, and there are threats to victory. It also has some fast-paced moments. There's some destruction moments, and while it's not the majority of the experience, there is an enjoyment gained from it being fantasy. And so we have all this, and then let's combine it. Let's merge it. Create a base and work towards an end game. Fight monsters and immersive first-person gameplay. Now, you could take the previous stuff and come up with a dozen different ways to do this. These are just how I saw them turning into a mechanic. Like trust me, you could do this limitless number of ways. But the point is, if you're basing it off of these motivations, it's much more likely to actually evoke them. It's much more planning something out than just flipping a coin and hoping you've made the right game. And so let's take these these mechanics. We were at I guess it's like a quasi mechanic. We're going to break it down to mechanics with the core loop on the next page, I think. Nope, pitch. I was in a game design school. They told me all about pitch statements. Now I got to write them everywhere. Okay, so a pitch statement is just it's a statement that you can give that describes your game to someone who has no idea about it. It's also sometimes referred to as an elevator pitch. Anyone considering applying for the Roblox internships, you will need to give one of these if you are going to the accelerator program. So get good at pitching. It's very helpful, especially in the indie scene. And so the pitch I've come up with for this game is, in this first-person survival crafting game, you play as a steampunk pirate trying to build the best airship in the sky so you can take down the Sky Leviathan monster that ate your family. Yeah, that sounds fun to me. I mean, you can imagine that game. Some of you might want to make it, and you're welcome to. I'm not claiming it. And also, a pitch statement isn't really in my opinion, that defendable as a final product. You can make these in like 20 minutes. And that's the thing with design. Your game design stuff will be like 10% of your work at worst, but it will be 100% the reason your game succeeds or fails. It's the decisions you make. I mean, that's what programming is. That's what game development is. It's deciding certain routes, what certain strategies to take. So, in my opinion, a little bit of preparation beforehand and thinking through why your game's fun can help all the more at the end of it. A game of mine called Mortal Metal that I made during my last internship, it flopped. And you know why? Because at the end of the day, I never actually sat down and thought, who is this game for? I thought, I'm going to make it for everyone. And I highly advise against that. Unless you're making a sandbox game, do not try to make your game for everyone, because it won't work. It'll be like, imagine going to a restaurant. There's a dish which has a little bit of what you want on it, and there's another dish which has exactly what you want. Now, the one dish might have a little bit of what everyone wants on it, but no one's going to pick it when the thing they actually want is somewhere else. Like, yeah, people could enjoy Mortal Metal, but there were better versions of it. There were better versions of what they were looking for already available. So do not go for every audience. Go for one. Go for one and then try to get as many people into that specific audience as possible. And yeah, so that is how motivation can be built up into a pitch, and from a pitch to a core loop. Now, almost out of water. Okay, so progressing, in this case, we have explicit mechanics shown in the pitch statement, which are helpful. However, the deducted mechanics will be the things that those mechanics need to exist. Like, you can't upgrade your ship necessarily without having a way to progress through upgrades. And so you have like need to earn upgrades, need to find monsters, need to evolve the challenge over time, because obviously strategy and a longer game can only be fun if the game evolves. At least that's my opinion. I guess there are probably games like chess where, well, even though chess is different because the stakes of the game change as stuff goes on. The early game will almost always be different than the end game. And so you need to find a way to incorporate that into your game, especially if you're going with this kind of setup. And so using that, I was able to pin together a core loop. You defeat a monster, deliver the monster to collect the monster's bounty. That could be cool because now you have to do a risk-reward type thing where you go out and you defeat a monster, but now you have to drag its giant monster body all the way back to the docks to sell it. So you can decide how far do I want to go to do this, and it could also be a way to encourage people to get bigger and better airships. And these kind of, like, you never want to have a game mechanic which is just the best idea. Like if you can't always do a risk reward, a cost benefit, always have them give up something. And with that, you get compelling gameplay. And in fact, one of the books on the original screen, it's by my old professor, a guy named Mike Sellers. His thing's all about systemic gameplay, which deserves a talk of its own, honestly. But systemic gameplay, in the gist, is gameplay which uses some well-defined mechanics that work off each other to create a infinite number of situations. Well, not typically it is infinite, but comparatively there is a limit usually to how many meaningful situations you can get from a systemic gameplay. But chess is an example. Minecraft is a great example. When mechanics build off each other, every addition you make, every additional mechanic that's added, adds more that you can do in the game. It works off all the other ones. A game, Totally Accurate Battle Simulator is one I recommend for people who really want to get into systemic gameplay and what it's like. But yeah. So, back on topic. You have a core loop. What can I do with that? And so you make the game with this core loop in mind. You release it, or you have testers in it, but it's not succeeding. Why is it not succeeding? Why are people entering my game but never coming back? How come I can put ad up after ad and they just don't play my game anymore? The answer lies here, or in onboarding, but we'll get to that. And let's focus on the core loop stuff. You can track how people go through this core loop. In fact, you can probably imagine it right now. Stuff like airship creation and upgrading. You could determine you could measure how long they're in the airship editor. You could also determine how many monsters they kill. How often are they being defeated? How often are they defeating the monster? How often do they get back with the monster's body to collect the bounty? Like, how far out do they usually go? Are they always going to the stronger monsters immediately? Like, these kind of analytics that track progression through a core loop are super helpful, because you may find people are doing fine at the airship creation stuff, but then they never actually leave the dock. Like, they might just stick around and be like, I don't know what to do. And that's partially an onboarding problem, but also there could be a situation where they go out and fight monsters, get killed once, and then just stay close to the stores ever since. Like, you need to find ways to measure that they're flowing through this core loop. They should be flowing through it. They should not just complete it once, they should complete it multiple times. And the more times you can get them to complete it, and by the way, when I say that, I know some of you may think, oh, I'll just make things faster. That's not what I mean. What I mean is that you need, in completing the core loop more times, if you just make it faster, then you have to have them complete it more times for the game to be compelling. That doesn't necessarily help. You just want them to keep on flowing through this, because that is what gameplay is. That is what a fun game is. It is flowing through this core loop again and again and again and again and again. And oh my, the sun is back up, but I just had a great night playing Minecraft, which has the simplest core loop ever of, it's just like survival, crafting, exploration. Those are the, I guess exploration would be like slash discovery, but that is what a core loop is. It's just running through that pattern of three things. Well, it's not, doesn't have to be three. I love core loops of three. Honestly, this one's a 4 one, and it does the job, and it should be 4, I think. I just love core loops of 3. I don't know. It's weird. I think I just love 3. My model has a 3 in it. It's probably a bias in there somewhere. People who wear too much flannel will be biased towards 3s. Okay. But yeah, so core analytics, core loop tracking with analytics. Well, yeah, I mean, if you disagree in terms of core loop tracking, this is, to clarify, playtesting with actual people is also very helpful. I'm not saying this will be a replacement for that, but I do think that having people go through the core loop and tracking their progress through that is very, very, very helpful for figuring out how these kind of games work and figure out why people aren't enjoying your game. And you can do stuff like correlate certain behaviors with people who are returning, and you can do so many things. And these are the three main options for analytics tracking on Roblox right now. I believe they have public API modules that you can use to easily access them. I personally use the PlayFab one because I like how they allow me to interact directly with the database, though it currently is closed to the wider public. So if you are not able to get into that program, then definitely Google Analytics is helpful, because I've using it. I've been able to just be able to export Excel sheets of like 20,000 rows. If you know SQL, definitely do something SQL based. Databases, as I said, are very helpful. Game Analytics is good for high level stuff. They allow you to make custom events, which are pretty cool. But yeah, so like Game Analytics, give it a shot. It's very helpful. I took a class on it, and it's been influencing the way I view game development ever since. And also, important thing to recognize, yeah, it's pretty awesome. I definitely apply, and hopefully they get it out to people. But I know, I'm sure if it's any delays, are for the betterment of the experience for everyone. But the law of large numbers, this is mostly just showing you why you need more testers, and why, in some cases, analytics just really can't help you. If you don't have the budget to put up a bunch of ads, or if you don't have a community to show stuff to, analytics can be difficult. I think in order to get a usable sample size for anything analytics-wise, you usually need to put up around 3,000 to 4,000 in Robux. Because if you look right in like the 200 and before in the 200 range, you'll get like massive errors from 20 to 40% that seem to reduce over time, which is good. But the more samples you have, the more reliable your information is. And it really isn't until the 1,000 mark. But honestly, in my opinion, I like going all the way to the 4,000 mark because that's usually less than 1%. And so analytics will almost always require large data sets. If you're trying to run it off of 50 people, just know you could have a skew of up to 30%. So try to visualize that and see why it could cause problems. Because yeah. Oh yeah. Oh, and Inception has posted a link to the PlayFab program, so definitely apply to that if you haven't already. Yeah. So the sample size stuff, that's important. It's also why just in-person playtesting can be helpful. But since you are making your game for a large group of people, not an individual, I would not put too much merit into a single playtest. No matter what you do, you want to get it in front of as many people as possible, because the more people who see it, the more reliable your insights will be. And analytics just allows you to automate the process. Okay, now onboarding. Pain is temporary, quitting lasts forever. Onboarding is, this is a little bit of an offshoot from the main topic, but I think it's very important because from what I can tell, most of the games on Roblox, in fact, most of the games in general, which fail to get an audience, a lot of them seem to really fail at the onboarding stuff. Because tell me, of all the games you know of, just in general, how many of them are like, okay, let me bring it down a little bit. In my Steam library, I have about 50 or so games. I played maybe 10 of them. I thought I'd like the other 40. I didn't. I got it. I played it for like an hour. I couldn't get into it, and so I left. Now that could be because the motivation for that experience did not line up with what I usually expect from a game. But I bought those games thinking I'd like them. People enter your game thinking they'll like it. Like when someone sees the Adopt Me icon, they already know what this game is. They're not surprised when it's a social hangout. When people see the Phantom Forces, they don't think, is this a pet adoption game? No. They know it's shooting and combat and competitive. Like, so in a sense, all the stuff we've talked about is partially marketing. Like sure, if you do it wrong, people will get in, and then it won't match. yeah, no, I'm with you, Tyrage. The people will get into your game, and if you fail at the motivation part, you failed. But at the same time, you can. I genuinely believe a good onboarding process will get even an okay fun game an audience. Like it, so long as it's better than nothing. Though obviously aim for fun, aim for perfect, aim for getting that the most compelling experience you can. But the games that fail are rarely just the most dull, boring, miserable experiences ever. They're not. There's almost always a semi-compelling part to it. And I feel like a lot of them, they just lose people. Either because they'll get to a point and they won't realize that the best part's around the corner, or they won't understand it. Roblox games, and I'm speaking from experience, are horrible with tutorials. All right, yeah, no, see ya. Yeah, thank you for attending. All of these games could be so fun. Like, what's that one game which Curtis is always talking about? Does anyone here know Busy City Guy? What's the game he always talks about? It was made by David. What was it? It's a really fun game. No, it's the one with like the tubes, and it's like apocalyptic. Anyway, does anyone know it has like its own little cult following? Curtis is gonna kill me. Eclipsis. That was it. Yeah, yeah. No, Eclipsis is a great example. So JV Dad has asked, it's a good idea to release and keep iterating to try to make it better. Yes, release as early as possible, but when I say release, I mean release it to testers. A play test, you can do that as early as a week after you've started. Heck, maybe even the same day as if you're doing like game jam speeds. Don't wait until the last minute to start showing people your game. But at the same time, you don't necessarily need to have a full release to get testers in. I personally just have community members apply for testing, and I give everyone testing. But at the very least, it means that the game won't spiral to the front page unexpectedly. And also, if you use group access to your game, people can't download it. So if it sucks, that's fine. They can't download it yet. You can improve it. Yeah, so that's why I love group access. And but Eclipsis. Eclipsis is super. It's a super fun game. It has a steep learning curve, comparably to other Roblox games. Like go to Natural Disaster Survival. What's there to learn? You literally just stand around. They teleport you to the fun, and then you just don't die. And if you do die, that's still fun. Like that. It's a very accessible game. And that's why strategy games in general have more trouble on Roblox. For once, a younger audience, so they might not necessarily be as patient to learn something. But I no way believe. I don't think that the mechanics of Eclipsis are inherently too difficult for a child to understand. I was in chess club when I was in elementary school. Just in case you didn't think I was cool enough. Yeah, and I could play it. Beat my parents a few times. Or they let me win. Honestly, looking back, it could have been either. And my point is, I was able to understand more complicated rules and more complicated emergent behaviors and strategies. Hey, nice to meet you. All right, yeah. Thank you for showing up. Yeah, I'll probably be wrapping this up soon as well. So, yeah, thank you all for being here. It's been an hour and a half. Yeah, no, yeah, so with... Yeah, no, it's been great. I want to keep doing these. Honestly, I'm just happy that it didn't drop to 5 people after the first 10 minutes. Oh, that was a fear of mine. And I have the attendance thing slowly dropping in the corner, so it's just I know I got to wrap it up. All right, but no, teaching the people the game is so important. It's so important. In fact, that's what saved Superhero Life too. As I said, Sorkus playtested and said add a tutorial. And in terms of the types of tutorial you add, obviously some of you guys are aware that some of y'all know that the forced tutorial, where you can't do anything except for do the tutorial, is boring, and people will quit just because it's boring. And then oftentimes, like the image says, which is on Amazon, by the way, I feel like I got to rep it because I've used it in my presentation. Though this presentation isn't for profit, so I think I'm fine. I don't know. The pain is temporary, quitting lasts forever. And they said that as a joke, but it's also very true. People will make a snap judgment of your game and never come back. And that's horrifying. Especially when you look at the D1, D7 people returning to your game. And you see that 60% of people come to my game and then never come back. That's 60% of people who you probably screwed up the onboarding experience for. Skip tutorial is something people do. I'm not sure I recommend it, because if someone skips a tutorial, they're just saying, I don't want to sit through a boring tutorial. They're not necessarily saying, I already know what I'm doing. What I usually advise is sort of a passive tutorial, which is contextual. When you open up a UI, a little character might jump down and be like, hey there, here's how you do these things. And yeah, I'm available for voice acting for that character should you like. Yes, hello there, welcome to this new game. To your left, you will find a volcano, and to your right, you will find a house builder. All right, I don't know, that'd be a fun game. All right, back on topic. I'm gonna lose all of you. The onboarding is very important. And I think that's the last slide, but honestly, I don't remember these things. I was in a bike accident. I don't remember a whole lot of stuff all the time. Wear a helmet, y'all. Okay, yeah, keep improving your game. Honestly, and I, as a person who has 100 games on his portfolio, obviously I don't necessarily live perfectly by that, because I do move. You can move on from games. It's okay to move on from games. I moved on from Mortal Metal, but improving your ability through a single game can be very helpful. A lot of what I've learned, honestly, has come from not the 100 games I've made, but the last 10, which I focused on, which I tried to improve, which I try to get better. Because if you keep making a new game a week, you'll get really good at making that week-long game. So what happens when you get to week 2 on a good idea? You won't know what to do. So, like, this is actually something we'll see on onboarding with analytics. 100% of the players are there for the first 10 seconds. 90% are there for the first minute. 50% are there for the first 2 minutes, and you just see it diminish. Don't let your education be like that. Study the end game and the early game. And yeah, so I think that's about it. I'm fairly certain this is the last slide. Yeah, that is the last slide. So now we can pop over to Q&A, should you like. Yeah. Thank you all for showing up. You're welcome to pop out, though. Also, if you have any questions specifically for your game or just about the theory or things that you disagree with me with, I'm more than happy to talk about it. I signed up for this because I like talking about game development. And right now I'm in Indiana. There's not a whole lot of people to talk about it with. I can see my girlfriend's eyes just haze over, like when I start talking about a core loop. Yeah, she maybe heard me mention in the room next door, and she just all of a sudden forgot what she was doing. Just like, anyway, as a 2010 user, how can I make a name for myself? Well, let's see. I don't think really the year you join matters too much, but congratulations on being on the platform for so long. Making a name for yourself, make a game, honestly. The making a name parts, that comes after the game part. One thing you could do, if you want to go into a more contracting area, one thing I did for a while was I literally put up ads saying, hey, I'm bored and like building stuff. Tell me what to build. And then people would tell me, hey, can you build me this one suit? Can you build me this one map? And I'd be like, yeah, sure. Like you just get those connections, hang out on the dev forum. Like when I hire someone, okay, for one, it's very rarely because they pop into my DM and say, hey, you hiring? No. It's because I'll see them contribute valuable work, see them grow, see them as reputable people. So grow those connections. But yeah, but just keep at it, but don't do something that you don't enjoy, because I'm telling you, if you don't enjoy your work, you're not gonna be able to put in the hours needed to get ahead in it. This is a very competitive industry, and for every person who doesn't like what they do, who only lasts a month, you'll be competing against people who love what they do and have been doing it for years because they love it. So find what you enjoy first, double down on that, post your work online for other people to see, get involved in the community. I wish I'd gotten involved way earlier. Okay, so X Beerly says, so could you start with public testing releases and start analyzing the data you start getting, compare it with your new iterations? I think this could work if there's a bit of a low budget to advertise, and also to get more focused on certain areas and keep improving on not just only it, but the development in general. Yes, that is a great point. Comparing between versions is super helpful. In fact, if you want to save time on certain stuff like that, there's a concept called an A/B test. Now, an A/B test is basically so what I usually do is I just get the player's user ID, and if it ends in an odd number, I'll load the client one way, and if it ends in an even number, I'll load it another way. I'll then track that in the analytics, and then once you have 100 or 1,000 users, definitely 1,000, as I said, law of large numbers. If you have 1,000 users run through that test, you'll be able to compare and see, okay, did this change I make, such as spawning them in a certain area, or making the UI a different color, or anything. It can be minute, it can be major. If you have enough players, you will see a difference no matter what you change. And well, that's obviously blowing it out of the water. You can change something that no one will notice and it won't affect anything. So that is also something you can take away with it. Sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. All right. But yeah, A/B tests are great if you have a limited budget. Definitely, so definitely do that. But also comparing versions is also helpful for larger updates, such as the core loop tracking. Adding new content and adding new mechanics is something you can really only do with a new update, and then comparing how it affects engagement and how it affects playtime. Also, one thing, don't worry about monetization. Everyone worries about monetization. A game that gets a lot of people on it will earn money just because of the premium players and the money you get from that. Half of my income honestly comes from premium players. Yeah, I could monetize better, and I probably should, but also I'm doing fun. At the end of the day, make a fun game. That's the difficult part. That if you make a fun game, monetization is easy once you put your mind to it. Especially if you read behavioral economics books. Okay, so Ninja Master 999 says, when it comes to game design, I've heard and used the term Skinner boxes to describe certain games. How would you toe the line between good game design and addicting game design, or rather, how to make good experiences without resorting to those? That's a great question. I love the kind of stuff that gets into the philosophy and ethics of game design. So, in terms of Skinner boxes, is loot boxes is another word for it, or mystery chests, all that kind of stuff. I actually, you guys might not know this, I used to use them back when they were started really getting popular in Roblox. But as I learned more about them, I actually removed them from my game Superhero Life 2 and just gave away all the items. Just as like an apology to the community, like, I'm sorry, this was not a good mechanic. And I think Skinner boxes / loot boxes, I usually call them loot boxes. Loot boxes do promote addictive behavior, but the problem is, if you look at what we showed earlier, the chemical paths that react to an addictive behavior versus just fun, like, tell me, is eating ice cream addictive, or is it just good? That's the question. And the answer is vague and uncertain. But where I've found to stand on it, where I've come to stand on it, is if at the end of the day, the person is glad they made the purchase. Like, I think about buying a Lego set when I was younger. I would go to the Walmart, I'd pick up the Lego set on the entire drive home, I'd be looking at it and be like, oh, this is so great. I'd build it, I'd have a great time for like a week. It'd be on my shelf. A lot of them are still there. I've got a whole Lego collection over there I should show you all at some point. Anyway, but the point is, I didn't regret it. I never regretted the purchase. If someone buys a Skinner box, a loot box, they'll get excited for buying it, but then that's the only thing they get. They just get the excitement of buying and nothing else, because they could get something they didn't want. And so to me, transparency and just making sure that you deliver what players are expecting. Because whether they admit it or not, when someone buys a loot box, they don't buy it to get ripped off. They buy it to get the cool item. And so they better get that cool item. And that's how I think you should handle monetization, personally. Though there's definitely room for other philosophies in that. Let's see. Do you have any advice for advertising a new game you've made? Are there any good tips for getting a good CTR? So for advertising, typically, I posted on Twitter a while back, someone was having a CTR problem. It turned out it was a technical issue. Basically, let me actually show. Let me show this. I can just share my screen. Yeah. Can y'all see this? Okay. Let's see. Let's play a fun game called Don't Accidentally. I don't know. There's nothing bad in my DMs. I don't use my DMs. I don't like talking to people in DMs. It's like, no, use a group setting. All right. Let's see. Can I just pop over? Okay. Yeah. Here it is. So here is an example. Now it turns out, fully tech thing. This is perfectly fine. I was just trying to understand it from a graphics perspective, and I ended up doing that correlation thing we were talking about earlier, where I'd see something that wasn't necessarily there. like I think like, oh, something must be wrong. It must be these things. But so this is an example. It's there's a very clear thing in the front. Also, I recommend, so the variant I ended up making was making it more colorful. Certain colors pop, as anyone aware with a graphic design might understand. You don't want to make it too busy. You don't want to make it too. You want people to be able to glance at it and understand it. In fact, if you want advice for what a good game icon is, just look at the front page. Most of them are really well designed, whether if that was intentional or not. But there's typically one person. There's not too much that you can easily tell what's going on in each one of them. Like probably the most chaotic one I'm seeing here is maybe the dinosaur simulation. But even then, I can tell those are dinosaurs fighting. Like, have a very simple, very comprehensible thing. Have one thing. Show one thing. And then maybe don't even use text on it. You can use text if it's not clear what your game is without it. Like, I'm not sure this game would be clear without it. Is that what Shinobi Life used to be? Yeah, I've heard of that game. In case anyone's curious, it got taken down the day of my video being released, so those were half the comments on it, which is great. All right. So anyway, yeah, keep it simple. Focus on the cool thing. Don't use too much text. Okay. Let's see. This might. So do I? So do I dismiss these after I'm done? Okay, I'm just going to dismiss them after I'm done. It does not mean that like I have answered. How do? Okay, wait. So did I just pressed? Okay, I pressed answered live. Okay, so I pressed that. Okay, sorry. I promise this is going to be the big learning curve day. Okay, so I've answered all of those live. Okay, so this may sound like a basic question, but what makes people like pets so much? So, from my perspective, the reason people enjoy pets in real life is because they're social. Look at a dog. A dog is pretty much all the positive social emotions wrapped up in this little bundle. They're always happy to see you. They're always supportive. They're comforting. They're nurturing. Dogs are certainly an instance where there was never too many dogs in one spot. Essentially, like it was just like a very pro-social. There's some antisocial behavior. I mean, they did descend from wolves. So I mean, but like when dogs were bred into existence by humans, the nicest ones were selected, and so we've got these hyper nice animals that just love to see you, and so I think that's why people like pets in real life. In terms of video games, I'd say part of it is there's definitely a fantasy there. Like a lot of people who get pets and adopt me might not have pets in real life because, as not a dig at adopt me, but why would someone get an adopt me dog when they could just get a dog? Like it's not a better experience, and that's not any fault to them. Obviously, a real life dog is going to be better for a long time until we get this VR thing really off the ground. So I think there's a fantasy element for sure. I think there's probably some cultural elements. Like you'll notice that people wanting pets, it's kind of gender skewed to an extent. It's definitely not black and white, but you'll see more girls in those kind of games. And to an extent, that might be because media they've consumed has more animals in them. Though honestly, I have no references to support this. This is just my own view of things. So I definitely double check before you make any decisions. But that is why I would assume people like pets in games, at least on Roblox. But it's definitely social, unless you get to like a combat game where like you have an attack dog. It's almost always social. I'm starting a cafe. Any advice? Cafe is done. Just working on the tools. So cafes are very interesting. They're basically they're VR hangout games that aren't VR. And so social is important. The fantasy of working, because obviously most people who are going to be playing that game and working at it will be people who aren't actually working at a cafe. Because I doubt someone who's a barista at Starbucks will come home and say, finally, now I can play cafe life. And that's fine. I'm not digging at the concept because your target audience just won't be baristas, which is not a massive audience by any means. So you'll be supplying the fantasy of having a grown-up job. And that's good. In fact, people who have other jobs and have always just wondered, what if I was a barista? Or what if I was a firefighter? What if I was a doctor? What if I was insert any job with any cultural reverence here, and you'll find an audience. At the very least, you'll find people curious enough to try. And so for your game, definitely focus on immersion mechanics. You want, if you want, ideally, people, I think first person is helpful. But also, if you're going to be monetizing through exterior stuff, don't do first person because they want to be able to see the cool stuff they get for their avatar. And also, if they have a uniform, which can help with immersion, in a non-first person mode may be superior because then they can see the uniform and really immerse themselves in it. There's an amazing book called Intro to Game Feel, which I meant to reference tonight. By Game Feel. It's by Steve Swink. Read it. Definitely the first few chapters. It gets a little bit less focused later on, in my opinion, but that's also me, and I feel like I've said some helpful things tonight. He's much more qualified. Read it. The best example we had in the book, in my opinion, was describing cars. If you get in a car crash, you don't say, that person's car hit my car. You say, they hit me. Because our brains are just powering our bodies like vehicles. And cars, because controversially, our brains will start incorporating them into our identity. We'll think, we won't think I am putting my hands on the wheel to turn the wheel so that the car is driven. And we're not just simplifying it for like the sake of speed. We're doing it because we genuinely think when we control the car, our brain interfaces with it essentially, and it becomes an extension of our body. When we turn left, see, there it is. I said we turn left. I don't say when our cars turn left. I attribute my behavior onto the car, and that's how avatars work. You're driving your avatar. You're controlling that avatar. When your avatar gets impaled in a horror game, you feel it to an extent. Obviously, not as much as if it happened in real life, but you feel it, and it's because your brain is connected to it. It's endowed it in a sense. All those little biases and cognitive patterns that tell you don't get impaled have considered what it just saw as part of it. Like it's created a sympathetic response, and so definitely with immersion, go all the way if you can. Don't get annoying with it, but like from what I can tell, there'll be people who will play a game just for the as close to reality immersion experience. And if they're living a fantasy, in my opinion, is almost always immersion. You almost always want to go full into immersion for deep fantasy games. As to whether or not that's first person, maybe do an A/B test. I typically think first person handles better for immersive heavy games. But yeah, animations for stuff. Do animations for the coffee and like for creating stuff. Make it as detailed as possible. Obviously, you have limited time and budget. Make it as detailed as possible. All the way. And ambiance through like lighting and sound design is also really helpful. All right. But yeah, so next question. Would you recommend hiring a team of developers? I've put this in consideration before, but I've never really tried. When you say hiring a team of developers, I'm assuming you mean like paying them, or either hiring to make the game for you or hiring to work beside you. So actually, let's see. So because I guess there are a few ways to take this. Depends on what exactly you're asking. I guess I'm going to assume that you're just talking about bringing more people into the studio, like just to get to do more work. And I would say that in terms of increasing your team size, yeah, do it. But build your project relating to it. Like don't just bring someone in to do what you do faster, unless you really have like something that requires a lot of content, in which case rethink your game design. The more content you need for a game to be fun typically reflects a poor game design. It's like story-based AAA games. You should not be designing your games like a AAA game. Those have massive amounts of artists. Don't do that. Instead, with expanding your team in general, you want to bring in someone who complements you, not like is nice to you, though it does help. I'm talking about, in my case, probably the closest I've had to a career-long partner, and it's only been the last three-ish years. It's a guy named Rafirian One. He's a Blender artist. He is a very talented person when it comes to visual character design stuff. And I never really used Blender for the longest time. And so I just kept on bringing him on for projects, and we became friends, and it was just an overall enjoyable experience. And so I kept working with him. And because he was also working on it with me, the games came out faster. He could complete an asset 4 times as fast as I ever could. And that's typically how it should go. You want to get a diverse team of people. Typically because we don't have massive budgets usually as indie developers, especially before we're adults, which I guess I'm an adult now. Ugh, disappointing. You'll want to make it a percent share thing. I like going with the method of just your share of the game is just your hours work divided by the hours work of everyone who's ever worked on the project. I feel that's the most fair, because if you you could try weighting it based on skill level or how much it adds to the game, but that just overcomplicates stuff. And in my opinion, there's no real benefit, because you could say, oh yeah, you're more skilled, I should pay you more. And that will incentivize more skilled people to join your team, sure, but from a purely fairness perspective of just like of what they add to the game, you'll also be more talented at some point. And I guess I've always found it more helpful to just treat everyone equally as I'm treated, because you all are putting in the same amount of work. At the end of your life, you will have had a certain amount of minutes in your life, and you will have spent a specific amount helping me make my game. So you have given a percent of your life to my game, and my life is equal to yours. So you should be given an equal payout. Should you work equally, of course. And yeah, that's my view. Obviously, a lot of room for other views. Yeah. So that's my that's my view on adding new team members. All right. With the upcoming subscription service coming to Roblox games, what rewards do you think are best tied to subscription compared to the one-time payment or free item? So there are two ways that subscription services are nice. The first one, let's break down inherently what the difference is between a subscription and a one-time payment is. Because typically with a subscription service, you'll sign up for it once, so it is a one-time purchase. You're just paying longer, which I'm not necessarily saying is immoral. Typically, online games have a continuous cost to them, especially if you're updating them. Like running those servers is not free. You have to pay for them. So a subscription service is great for supporting games that will be permanently or indefinitely online. I typically lean away from subscription service for private, like single player games or games where the core motivation is single player. I don't think those work very well in terms of making a compelling purchase that people will enjoy and that won't feel predatory. Don't use subscription services over normal products just because you don't want them to you want them to forget about it. I think that's predatory, and I don't like that. I don't like it when people think of subscriptions as like they'll buy it once and forget about it. You want the things you sell as a subscription to be something you sell to your core players, the people who visit every day, the people who don't buy it once and then never use it or never really appreciate it. You want the people who appreciate it, get the most out of the purchase, especially a recurring one. In terms of in terms of the actual buying of subscriptions, I think there is a convenience factor. Like if I have to rebuy something every month, it does add a level of annoyance. I guess there will be times where I just want to automate it. Like really, it's automated purchasing of a product. And if you really are just selling your thing as an automated purchasing of a product, focusing on just people who you know will be playing often, then I think that's ethical. But your question was not if it's ethical. I'm sorry. I went on a tangent. But in terms of supplying rewards to these kind of people in an ethical manner, I'm not telling you how to do it unethically. There are other articles you can go for that. I'm not saying you'd want to. I know people out there exist who want to take advantage of their audience, and it's not my cup of tea. You have the opportunity as a game developer to touch the lives of many people. Leave a positive impact. With the subscription stuff, you will want it to be stuff they use every day. You will want it to be stuff that they that makes the game more fun for them and rewards them for supporting you. However, it does not necessarily ruin the gameplay of others. There are a few small instances where that is okay, such as games where it's all about like dominating other people, such as so a lot of those like fighting games where it's just like you have a level 100 person kill a level 2 person in a single hit, and that's where the fun is. I mean, people know that going in. They know there's a power imbalance, and the fun is leveling up so you can be stronger than other people. And in those cases, I'm fine with monetizing that. I think that's part of the game. I think that's the enjoyable experience. Buying a level up in there will help you enjoy the game more, and it won't necessarily make others enjoy the game less, because there was always going to be people more powerful than them who would destroy them instantly. All you've done is basically just bought extra time in the game, which I think is fine. In terms of ethics of buying in general, I don't want to talk about like the ethics of capitalism in this. That's not what we're here for. So I won't go down that road. But let's just make sure that people are rewarded for supporting. And the coolest stuff in subscriptions. Give them flair. Give them the most you can without disincentivizing other purchases. Because like there's no harm in having an endless amount of things to buy, so long as you aren't making it like a compulsion. So long as like the game can't, like can't be enjoyed. Because if people are willing to spend in your game, then that is a choice they make. And if they continue to keep making it, and you're not taking advantage of the patterns in their head, then I think subscription services could lead to a lot of compelling stuff. Especially, I think honestly the best subscription thing you could sell is just a flex. Like, it doesn't got to do anything. It can be a flare next to the name. It can be a cool emote. It can be a cool skin for the character. Like, just something that sets them out as like, this is a cool person who supports the game. Like, for one, because that's not going to ruin someone else's day. No one's going to see a person with a flare that says like VIP member or supports the game and think, ugh, hate that they supported the game. Yeah, they'll just think, oh, that's cool, and maybe I'll be that one day. I think that stuff's fine. Okay, I think that I answered that a little bit longer than people were expecting, probably. Okay, it's kind of off topic, but do you have any thoughts yet on developers who make their income from developing also investing into Roblox like you? So people argue it's bad to have all your income coming from the same source, so it's better to diversify when it comes to investment. Let's see. I guess on a very basic level, I think there is an argument to be made about investing into the Roblox IPO because you believe in the company. I think it's a great company. I think it's an amazing company that's doing amazing things. And in that sense, it makes sense to invest in it, like a Tesla or any up-and-coming source that could change the world. But at the same time, Warren Buffett once made a bet against people, a bunch of stockbrokers, where they would try to buy the stocks they thought would best perform over a period of 10 years, whereas Warren Buffett would buy an index fund. An index fund is just it's a stock that's it's diverse as they can make it. It is typically 300 to 500 different stocks. So basically what it does is it mirrors the market. As the market improves, your stocks improve. As the market goes down, your stocks go down. It's a low risk, long term, high reward thing. You'll get like a 30, like for people who invest in index funds in the 80s, they'll get like they'll have like a decent amount more money now. Like it also helps fight off inflation most of the time. It's not indefinite because eventually, I guess the global market could crash. But if the global market crashes, typically the last problem you'll have is that you won't be able to retire. Stuff will be a lot worse. It's like apocalypse. So yeah, and if in case you're wondering, at the end of the 10-year period, Warren Buffett's index fund outperformed people whose sole job was to find the best performing stocks. So yeah, you can speculate on a company and say it'll do better than others, but from what I can tell, it's still just a gamble. And I strongly believe in Roblox. If there was a company to invest in, I'd say Roblox. But statistically, it's still a company. And our minds tell us we have so many biases that confirm things that we like as being better. And at the very least, with an index fund, you don't have to worry about it. And so I say diversify using an index fund. It's safer long term. And as they've mentioned, yeah, you already have all your eggs in one basket with developing on Roblox. But also, I'm not sure I'd necessarily be able to fault people who invest in Roblox because, well, they're experts. And actually, like, if you release a game, like an Adopt Me level game, and it makes Roblox perform even better than ever, and you have all your stock in Roblox, well, yeah, you've earned more. Like, your stock has gone up in worth. Like you have a direct impact on your stock now, which is not something most people can necessarily have. So I say there are benefits to it, but I personally use an index fund and continue to. I don't plan on buying Roblox stock for that reason, other than maybe as like put a plaque on my wall saying $1 worth of Roblox stock or something like that, something small. I'm not risking my retirement on it. And as to whether other people buy it, I think that's a just decision up to them. That is how I've taken to it. But no, Roblox is a great company though. So if you've invested in it, great choice. But you should get an index fund just in case. How do you think some of the major technical improvements for Studio will change Roblox long term? Also, wait, did I? Yeah, I first answered 11%. Okay. Well, we'll change long term. PBR, mesh deformation, new lighting. You think the polish and production quality of the games will start to raise throughout the board? Do you think it will unlock any doors for new successful Roblox game ideas that would have otherwise not worked out, i.e. sport? Do you think that any big studios will start to move into the platform and actually do well? Or do you think it will just be used by a few power users that otherwise not really commonly adapt? So it raises an interesting question of, this basically comes down to, in my opinion, free market and how it works and the trends towards monopolies. I think that the polishing aspects specifically bode very well for Roblox, because for one, other game engines will continue to exist which have better polishing things. And like imagine Roblox came out in the 80s. Would people still be playing a 4-bit or 8-bit video game in today's modern world? No, of course not. Other platforms will have come out to beat it. Roblox was one of those platforms that came out to succeed in an 8-bit engine. You have to continue adapting to your competition. And from what I can tell, technology for video game development will only get better. And so Roblox has to keep up somehow. Obviously, they are not the leaders in rendering technology per se, but they're not trying to be. They're trying to be the leaders in streaming technology. Trying to make so anyone on any device can pop into a game within 30 seconds, not have to download a game for 10 years on Steam. So it's particularly long at Indiana internet speeds. The new Microsoft Flight Sim. Oh my, going hoarse. The new Microsoft Flight Sim took me 3 days to download. You know what? I didn't even like it that much. It's like, anyway. The Roblox has benefits, and I think it will continue to lead because of those benefits. I think investing in streaming things will make it much more accessible. It's the difference between YouTube existing now and having to download movies for 2 hours back when they first started releasing them partially online. Streaming is so easy, it's so accessible. It is almost impossible to beat, in my opinion. Like, you can tell people, whoa, I got this HD Blu-ray of this movie. But at the end of the day, most people are just going to stream it on Netflix. Like, yeah, the HD version's better. We see, yeah, we admit it. The theaters are better ways to watch movies, but honestly, even when movie theaters open back up one day, I'm not necessarily going to be going to them a whole bunch. As long as I can watch the movies at my own personal leisure and not spend $40 on candy. I just eat too much candy. I'm going to choose the home version because it's more convenient, and convenience seems to always win in the long term. So, yes, they're going to continue improving stuff just to stay semi-competitive, because there is a drop-off eventually. But I don't necessarily think they'll ever be a AAA studio platform, because AAA games, they sell fully on marketing. That's the thing people don't realize. A AAA game is not about necessarily, well, they're changing, but for the longest time, AAA games have just been release big, drop off afterwards. Like the recent, like the Naughty Dog Studios, almost every game of theirs, huge initial release, drop off after. Like there's not a continuous community of people just playing it indefinitely, because it's not systemic. Oftentimes it's a bunch of pre-scripted stuff, which is really fun the first time, but then you get the same experience again and again and again. And it's because those really scripted, really beautiful things market really well. That's the reason they keep doing them. You think they don't know about systemic gameplay? They know about systemic gameplay. They just know it's hard to show someone a chessboard and then ask them to pay $60. And like you have to show them this beautiful scripted cutscene that looks like it was a movie, and it's because the entire AAA industry is just a marketing machine. Half of the budget is in marketing. Can you imagine half of a Roblox game's budget being on marketing? And I'm including like worked hours. Like you worked equally on marketing the game as you did on the actual game. No, of course not. It's because that's not how indie games work. And until until we have actually not until I don't think that'll happen on Roblox, because due to the lack of rendering stuff, it just won't market as well as a game which they can make look beautiful. They're the people who focus on just the marketing side of things will have an advantage, and they also charging $60 for something on Roblox. What is that? What's that in Robux? It's like 400 Robux or $5. I know there's better rates higher up, but I don't remember them. And so that times 12. Let's see, so I don't know. I'm not doing the math right now. All right. The other big factor, and you'll notice, you remember all the craziness and drama that came up from Fortnite, where Fortnite was like, we're going to ditch the platform and make people download it from the shady like website client, and like we're not going to use Play Store. And then recently with Apple and like was it Fortnite again? It was Apple and someone else. They weren't doing this because they cared about free speech. Like the Epic does not do that for that reason. Individuals in it may very well care about free speech, but that is not what motivated this decision. What motivated was the large chunk of money taken by the platform. And Roblox takes a good chunk of money. And I don't think that's a bad thing. I think that, let's see, actually, I'm going to stop sharing my screen. I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. But at the end of the day, the kinds of people who benefit from a 30%, like a 30 to 40 or 50, whatever the percentage is, it's kind of vague because you buy Robux at different points. I think I think at Roblox it's like it's like 40 to 50%. It's higher for sure. I think it was like 2 or 3 times as high as some of the main competitors. But point is, I will still likely earn more money on Roblox than another platform, because if I sell my game on the App Store, it's still taking a big chunk out of it. If I sell my game, if I use an engine like Unreal, for the longest time charged you. I think Unity did as well. The server hosting costs, as well as the man hours needed to get some of this technology, like streaming and level of detail, and all of this technology that we just get for free through using the Roblox engine. That would take a long time to make. And so it's on an individual level as to whether or not you think you'd personally benefit from this platform. I think most indie developers will benefit from it, but also, as Tarj pointed out, games get bigger. Adopt Me is a massive game now, but it's not a AAA game. It's not. And the big companies will not move on to the platform. Big companies may emerge from it and then move off the platform because they might realize we could be making so much more money and now have the funding to make our own service. So I would not be surprised if that happened. I don't necessarily recommend it. I want Roblox to keep these big name items, but at the same time, they might find themselves in a situation where they have to either negotiate for better rates from like an Adopt Me sized game, or risk losing them. And also, but it'd be a huge risk for Adopt Me because you'd be abandoning all your players. So yeah, that's the thing. It's a very complicated thing, and I don't personally recommend anyone trying to jump off the platform. But I think someone will try it at some point. I know the Unturned guy, he didn't jump a popular game off the platform, but he found success outside of it. But I think that in terms of platform stuff, it's a really good platform, and it really helps smaller teams the most. It helps smaller games the most. Ideally, Roblox will continue. I've seen them working in this direction. It's great. They've been making the games page more competitive by moving popular down and having most engaging up front. They reward people who make smaller but more engaging games. And I think through improvements in that, you will find it more and more easy for people to create games on the platform and to get to get their niche carved out. Because here's the thing, Adopt Me got big. All these other games got big. My numbers stayed the same. My numbers have been pretty consistent for Superhero Life 2 for the last 2 or 3 years. I didn't lose money because Adopt Me gained it. It just grew the platform. And in terms of direct competitors, I'm sure, I know that if I recall, obviously having someone jump in who outcompetes you is annoying. But as I said, it won't be a massive industry. It'll just be another indie developer who does better. So yeah, I think it'll typically be smaller teams who are forever on Roblox. This clip's going to be bad if that turns out to be not true, but I do believe this is an indie platform. I think it's going to stay that way. As to when you stop defining a team of like 10 people as indie, I think that's still indie, but it will never be a AAA studio. Let's just put it that way. Let's see. Do you think it? Oh, I think new success in terms of technology unlocking new game ideas for sure. In fact, my game, Superhero Life 4, and your game, Tyrage, like the mesh deformation has made a lot of stuff possible that wouldn't have been before. And I expect as they continue to improve the technology, more stuff will be possible. And I'm excited for it. Let's see. Do you think any big studios will start? Okay. Yeah. So I think that's my view on it. I think probably the thing I have the least amount of understanding on would just be the general market competition stuff, because well, I guess I feel like I understand it, but it's something that has so many variables that could change. If the market becomes a monopoly, it'll be because Roblox did not act to properly regulate the market. Because the person who owns the platform can regulate a monopoly out of existence. Monopolies cannot beat the platform which they stand upon. They can hurt the platform, but they can't necessarily stop that stuff. All right, but yeah, so that's all right. So right into I've been thinking about adding a sort of loot box system into my games. That feature would allow me to add crafting and trading for very special items. Who knows what they're getting with their hard-earned purchase. When a great deal of currency is spent, what do you think loot boxes that guarantee a certain tier? All right, so in terms of loot boxes into your game, in a sense, there can be compelling gameplay from randoms. And so obviously a hardline view does get, everything gets fuzzy when you take a hardline view on something. Their specific tier guarantees help. They make it less malicious, in my opinion. Personally, though, you could just, like the randomness you can add to your game to make it compelling through random mechanics doesn't have to be in the purchase area. You like let's think of it this way. You could have a thing like a mystery box that drops sometimes when you kill a monster, and then when you get it, you get an unknown amount of money that goes to you. You can then spend that money on decided items you desire, but the money itself comes to you as random, and you get that sort of surprise, like, oh wow, I got a lot, and that's good. And it's also, if it doesn't give you much, that also doesn't matter because you didn't necessarily have to spend to get it. So I think, in my opinion, that those kind of mechanics could just be abstracted entirely out of the monetization stuff. You could get a compelling random mechanic which makes your game fun and has the same gameplay effect as a loot box without attaching it to monetization. Just so long as you aren't trying to get them into a habit loop of spending, or even habit loop of playing, which is still, but I think a habit loop of playing is a little bit more difficult to say is bad because people could genuinely just want to play the game. Like an addictive game can be a good thing or a bad thing. It's just determining whether or not you want to be addicted to it. Is your life getting worse because you're playing this game too much? If it is, then I'd say that's too bad. I didn't mean to come to dismiss it. When I say it's too bad, that's too much in the wrong direction. You should not be doing that. That's bad design and it's parasitic in a sense. It's not like too bad, so sad. I'm here to make money. No, don't have that attitude. Make sure you've figured out where you stand on these ethics, so that at the end of your career, once you've released a game, you don't want to realize, oh snap, I've just hurt a bunch of people. Like, you do not want to do that. You want to know where you stand before you make it. So I appreciate you asking the question. Hopefully my response gave some insight of possible ways forward to do this without necessarily monetizing it maliciously. Yeah. What do you think about the Roblox concerts like Ava Max and Lil Nas X? Short term, I think they're great because I think that they bring new people onto the platform, and that's good. That's good for everyone. I don't think they're sustainable. I don't think they're better than a regular concert. I think once the venues open back up, regular concerts will happen again, and we'll see these happen a lot less. Also, they cost a lot to make. There's not really a way to procedurally, like, sure, you build up the tech to allow for it, but you still have to make. I'd say the majority of the work is probably the animations and the meshes and all of that stuff that needs to go into it. I don't see it as a sustainable way to drive Roblox growth. I don't think it's hurting Roblox. I just don't think it's a Band-Aid, essentially. Not a Band-Aid, because we're not bleeding out. It's like I don't know. It's like putting on like high heels so that you get taller or something. It's like you can only do it so much. It's not going to make you into a giant. and no one's going to be able to get a basketball career out of putting on high heels. Yeah, so they're going to have to find better ways, and they are finding better ways. They don't seem desperate to me by doing this. They seem strategic, and they're trying to get the most out of a situation in like a non-exploitative sense while it lasts. They just provided people an ability to go to a concert when nobody can go to concerts, and I think that's great. I just don't think it'll be too long term. All right. All right, another question. What are the thoughts on genres? All right. Yeah, so I do not, well, okay. I definitely do not like the idea of being able to put in, the removal of player preference type sorting. Stuff like, I want to play a fantasy game, I want to play this stuff. But at the same time, I don't think the genre system as it was necessarily like bulletproof. I don't think it was necessarily a great answer. I think it was better than nothing, and I don't want there to be nothing. But I feel like, for one, the Steam way of doing this, I think, is a great option with people with like, there's just 100 different tags, thousands of tags, and like you can sort by like, okay, I want a RPS game that's single player, that's 2D, and like you just continue to filter through until you have a list of these games which you'll likely enjoy. I believe, from what I can tell on the outside, Roblox wants to automate all this stuff. They want the engaging thing to become so smart that it can just predict what you like and give it to you. And I mean, yeah, developing long-term technology is great, but that's for, yeah. I think sometimes you need to, I don't know. Roblox very much seems to have an attitude of like curing diseases without painkiller. Like we've given you the cure. In a year, you'll be back to normal. But like, I don't know, give me some painkiller now, doc. I don't need to suffer this long. We can do a quick fix in a few days and not have to wait until the entire system's ready in a year. But obviously, it's so much easier to criticize from the outside. There's so many things they want to do, and there's only so much time they can use to do it. But I very much hope that they do allow for a more task tag specific improvement to the game sorting, to the game filtering, to game discoverability. I think that by and large helped people, and I'd rather they have expanded it, honestly. But I do believe in their ability to get a better system. I think over time that recommended for you stuff is going to get better and better, and ideally with sponsored games improving, we'll be able to get more focused discoverability over time, where they'll be able to show your ads people who they think will like it the most. And on a high level, they might be right. Like, these automated systems kind of protect you from yourself to an extent, because it'll target your market better than you might be able to. But for people who are able to outperform it, well, it limits them. And so to me, there's always a benefit to having the automated route, which helps the majority of people, but then not losing the expert route for people who really know what they're doing, who can do it better. And yeah, I hope that they have an option for it coming. They might. I don't think they don't. I'm sure they listen to us. I just think that it would have been nice if they hadn't removed the genre system until they had the new solution where it needs to be. They remove stuff all the time, which is no longer used. Like nobody uses. Let's see, like corner wedge parts. I don't see them as often. It's not that they don't get used. I'm sure you use them in some games, but like a lot of times, typically when you'll find people using meshes and unions a lot more often now. So if they were to say we're removing corner wedge parts and replacing them with unions, it'd be fine. It'd be fine. Like, these deprecations can work. Just make sure that the replacement is up to standard. You don't need to cancel something too early. But I don't know. Maybe there was some technical thing on the back end which made genre sorting difficult to maintain long term. But yeah, so I definitely think, though, from the outside perspective, without knowing what they know or their view on it, I would have preferred they just kept the genres around until they had something ready. Yeah, and with that, I think we're done. I appreciate the 15 attendees who stuck around. Yeah, does everyone have any final questions? Or let's see. We all good here? Oh, I just realized I've not been able to see that. That's kind of a drawback with the bevy stuff. I can only either see the Q&A or the general. Like I couldn't see them both at the same time. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. But no, I'm glad y'all showed up. Uh, yeah. No, I much appreciate it. Yeah, and let me know if you enjoyed it. If you want to see more of these, there are definitely more topics to discuss. But yeah, yeah. Thanks again. So let's see. Guess I'll head out. I will see y'all next time. Tweet me if you have any ideas for what kind of stuff you want to hear about next time, or just tweet me with questions, and I'm be more than happy to do stuff on the dev forum. If you have a longer question or concern, I always love giving advice to up and coming devs because I know I wouldn't have made it this far if people hadn't helped me out. Yeah, you gotta keep paying it forward. Yeah, so yeah, reach out. All right. I know I might not respond to that. I'm tired. It's 8:30 here. Been working all day. Been working all week. Working all life. Yeah, but I like my job. So I will talk to y'all later. All right. Bye.